Gathered friends, welcome to Bionicle Fanon Reviews.
For today's featured review, we have something that's a little bit different. You see, typically we review Bionicle Fanon models with the Bionicle Fanon reviews, whether they be canonized models or just fan creations, but this time we're reviewing a slightly different style of Bionicle product. In case you aren't aware, the Bionicle resin casting community has really expanded over the years, and I have continuously been blown away by the amount of quality items that come out of stuff like Socketball's shop, which is producing replicas of Bionicle masks in different colors, whether they be rare colors or simply colors they never even existed in the first place, in perfect LEGO quality. And that's what we're taking a look at today. So why don't we just take a look right now and see all the different masks I was able to get from the latest mask drop.
Okay, so here we have two of Socketball's custom resin-casted masks, and we also have two genuine LEGO masks. Now I have a question for all of you. One of these two masks costs $800 to $1,000 US and is the real deal, and one of them cost around $20 from Socketball's masks. The same goes for these. One of these cost around $200 on Bricklink, and the other one, you guessed it, $20. From a distance, can you tell what exactly is the difference, which one's the genuine one, and which one's the legit one? And I'm gonna have to be honest, it's really close. Now, let's get in a little bit closer so we can obviously see the differences between them. But honestly, I am so impressed with the quality of these that I just felt they deserve a review of their own. So let's zoom in really tightly here. Let's just focus on the Kraahkan right here. So, pointing these together, I think it's probably fairly obvious by zooming in very closely exactly which is the real one and which is the resin-casted one. So, if you didn't guess it already, this is the genuine LEGO mask, and this is the resin-casted one from Socketball. But they're very close, and it only becomes apparent when you turn them around. You can very clearly see the imperfections in the resin mold, but honestly, with the outside of them, and especially from a distance, it's not obvious which of these is the legitimate real deal, which I am honestly really impressed with, because I was not really sure what to expect when I ordered these. I specifically ordered them in pearl gold to see if it would mimic the actual LEGO style, and while it is obvious which is real and which is fake, they sure do come very close. So let's zoom out a little bit here and take a look at exactly what's included in this order. So for my first Socketball order, I specifically ordered one of each of the pearl gold masks he had available. So of course that is the Kenohi Ignika, the Mask of Life, which is the legit one here, and the Kenohi Kraahkan, the Mask of Shadows, in pearl gold. The legit one is right here. I also ordered the Kanohivahi, the Mask of Light, in pearl gold, which is a color that it was never made in, so I've just brought along a silver one for comparison, which is the legit LEGO piece. I ordered the Kanohivahi, the Mask of Time, in pearl gold. Again, another color it was never produced in. And I also got one last black-colored Kenohi Ignika, just in case I wanted to use it to represent, say, the dead Mask of Life, or the moment in the 2007 comics where the Mask of Life eventually died. So, right here you can see these ones are Socketballs, the 5 up here, and these 3 are official LEGO. And this is really phenomenal to me. So, in case you don't know how it works, essentially the way that people do resin casting is that they take the original LEGO piece, and through a complicated process to produce a resin mold, they actually cast it in a full mold using clay or resin and whatnot, and then you can actually use it to make multiple different pieces. So, you can make them in pretty much any color. You can just dye the resin a certain color, so basically you can produce colors in really any part that you want. I personally actually did try my hand at resin casting during the pandemic when I was getting really bored and didn't have anything to do. I tried to do some resin casting on my own. I spent a significant amount of money on resins and different casting materials and clay and whatnot. And oh boy, I was not successful. The results of my work were mixed to poor at best. I pretty much produced only one mask, and there were a lot of imperfections, and eventually I just realized that it just kind of wasn't for me. I, for whatever reason, could not perfect it. That's why I'm so impressed by people like Socketball and other people in the Bionicle community and just resin casting community who can get this so right, because from a distance, it's not even obvious that one of these is not LEGO. Especially when I zoom out, when you go really far away from them. It would be pretty difficult to tell. I mean, even from a distance, I personally cannot tell until I go a little bit closer, and then it becomes pretty obvious. But still, the quality is absolutely fantastic. The other thing that really stands out to me is just how well they perfect the pearl gold Lego color. As you can see here, pearl gold is a very specific Lego color that arguably is fairly hard to replicate, especially when you're working with different dyes and powder, which is why this and this is really close. I mean, setting all these aside, let's just take a look at the two Mask of Lives next to each other. Sure, the resin casted one is a little bit more grainy than the actual one, and it does have a few imperfections, especially along the sides, but honestly, if you just look at them, the coloration is excellent. Now, there are a few things that I do want to make a note of, specifically for some of these actual resin casts. So if you flip it around here, you'll notice one major difference from the actual Lego piece. The Kenohi Ignika came molded with the axle already inside. I presume that this was to allow a molding point for the resin itself. Not 100% sure, but that's just kind of my guess as to why this came with it. It provides no functional difference unless you actually really wanted to stick a longer axle into the Mask of Life. For all intents and purposes, this is really all that you would use it for, so I think it's totally fine. The axle itself, though, is definitely one of the weaker parts of the model. It clings to things fine, but it's just the finish on the back of the axle just does feel a little bit poor quality compared to the rest of the mask. But honestly, this is the part that nobody sees anyway, so it doesn't really matter. All that matters to me personally is, does the front of the mask look good? And it does look pretty good. In fact, if you look at the actual Lego one, the one that I own is beat up a little bit. There are some scuff marks, there's some imperfections along the side of the mask. It's not perfect. But if you look at the resin casted one, it's honestly even better. Sure, it's a little bit grainier and you can definitely see some of the resin powder mixed in, but you can definitely see that the quality of this mold is really good. And the weight difference between the two masks as well is actually pretty comparable. The Lego one is somewhat noticeably heavier than the resin casted one. The resin one is a lot lighter, but it's not a major difference, and it doesn't really provide any functional difference having one be heavier than the other. It's just something that I personally noticed. Let's now zoom out and take a look at the Mask of Shadows. So the Kanohi Kraahkan right here, you can see the legit Lego one in pearl gold, which is one of the rarest Bionicle pieces ever. I was very lucky to be able to obtain this by a fan of the channel, actually, who was able to sell it to me at a very good price, so thank you so much for that. And if we look at the actual resin casted one here, again, you can see that they're very, very similar. Let's now kind of move these onto the other side where you can really see just how the resin version differs from the actual Lego version. Looking closer at the resin casted one by Socketball, again the axle could maybe use a little bit of work, but again it doesn't really matter because it is just the axle, you don't really see that piece. And of course the backside is a lot rougher than it actually is on the front. I think my camera in particular is making it look much worse than it actually is. It's really just fine. These aren't actual grains, it's just kind of a different mixing of the colors for the mix for the particular pearl gold coloration here. But again, as you turn it to the front, there really is no difference. So it's pretty perfect from the front. But the back, it does have some imperfections, but nobody really buys the masks to show them on the back anyways. But again, that is one difference. The Lego one is obviously very clearly a much higher quality piece because, again, this is injection molded plastic, but for a resin sculpt compared to a Lego piece being this good, I'm honestly so impressed. Let's move aside now and take a look at the Mask of Light, the Kenohi Voki. So here we have our Kenokia Voki, the Lego one here in silver, and the actual one from Socketball in gold. He did send out a message that stated that, unfortunately for this one, the axle had to be cut off due to a molding error, which caused the mask to sit a little bit on the side. It does not matter because it basically functions the exact same way. It still fits perfectly well inside a Bionicle's standard head, and arguably this makes it a little bit more versatile for other pieces because it is just the stud connection. Of course, on the back side here, you can see that the molds are basically identical, and that's because the resin-casted mask is specifically made from the original Kenokia Voki mold. So, of course, they look pretty perfect next to each other, and for me personally, I just think it's really cool to get the Kenokia Voki in pearl gold, so now people can actually make a pearl gold Takanuva if they want. All they need now is someone to resin cast the armor pieces in pearl gold, and you're well on your way. And then we can move on to some of the final two masks here. First off, I have the Kanohivahi. I don't have any of my duplicate Kanohivahis with me, but personally I can attest to the accuracy and quality of this mask.
You can see that very much this does kind of retain the somewhat flexible nature of the original Lego piece just because of how skinny it is, but this one, honestly, even the underside of it looks really good, even compared to the other resin-casted pieces. You can even see the original Lego code right there, which is really interesting because, again, that was actually present on the original Kenohivahi. Moving this around here, it really does look pretty radiant in the light, and honestly, I'm kind of a fan of the slightly grainier texture, especially if you look at it here. It really does look like it's some sort of metal or some sort of molded piece that is very special, kind of makes it stand out, but still be very clearly pearl gold. And again, the Kenohivahi was produced before LEGO had even made the pearl gold color, so we do not have a pearl gold Vahi in existence, we just have a flat dark gold one and the orange one. So it's fantastic to actually get this piece in pearl gold, much like the Kenokia Voki, which we sadly never got a pearl gold version for. And lastly, we have the all black Kanohi Ignika, the Mask of Life. And here you can see some of the very slight mold imperfections, maybe just a little bit more obvious with the black coloration here, but honestly, it's not a big deal. I'm a big fan of how this one turned out, and especially comparing this against the other Avohkiis that I have. So again, this is the official LEGO one, this is the other resin-casted one. Honestly, the black one fits in very well, and if I was looking at it from afar, again, if I didn't know that they never made the Kanohi Ignika in black, I would have probably guessed that the black one is a real LEGO piece. The benefit to actually having the black coloration is that you don't really see the pigmentation that you see for some of the pearl gold pieces, which really makes them very obviously not LEGO. The black, on the other hand, is not very clear that it's actually resin casted because of the finish on it, and because of the coloration actually ensuring that this has its own unique look and feel. Again, turning this around the back, it does have the axle hole, much like the other resin-casted mask, which is a little bit different from the official LEGO Kanohi Ignika piece, but still, it's still a pretty good axle, and now it's probably, speaking of the axles, a good time to actually test them out on Bionicle heads and characters of their own to see just how good the clutch power is on these masks. So, to do this, I've brought over a demonstration right here, just Toahaga Norik right here, so we will pop his mask off just so we can take use of his head, and let's have him try on some masks. Presuming this doesn't kill him, let's slip on the Kenohi Ignika, and immediately you can see the clutch is very strong. I'm actually really impressed by how strong the clutch is on this axle. You can pick up the entire figure by the head, and it will not come out. The axle clutch is very strong, and thankfully, it's not too hard to remove either. It feels very much like a normal Bionicle mask, if not even stronger. I mean, look at his normal one. I'll put his normal one on. I mean, I can even just pick up the mask like this, and this doesn't even stick to his body. Like, his body falls off of the official LEGO piece. For the resin-casted one, the clutch power on it is actually a little better than the actual LEGO mask that I own. So, really, really impressive work there. And again, this does line up very correctly because it is, of course, the official LEGO piece, so it does work very well with exactly this head design. Of course, we can try it out for the other masks as well, so let's just put on the black one. Maybe that fits his color scheme a little bit better with a more muted color. And again, this just fits on the head absolutely perfectly, no complaints here. It really does have perfect clutch with the headpiece, so I am personally very impressed by how this particular version turned out. Now moving on, let's just try on some of the other ones. So first off, we have the Kanohivahi here, so let's just hook that up to his face, again just with the stud connector, and it works about as well as you'd expect. Just the standard Kanohivahi mask attachment, even with just the stud connector, not the axle, this has a lot of clutch power. This is not going to come off his face easily, so I would not be worried about them falling off. They have as much clutch power, if not more, than standard Bionicle masks. And just for the purposes of demonstration, let's wrap this up with the final two masks. So, Avohkii is on him right now, again, just the stud connector, and it's very, very strong. His body's not going to fall off. Really, like you can see right here, this is not even with the axle, and this is fitting perfectly. So the tolerances on these pieces have absolutely been nailed, and I can't wait to see what people will do with these different colorations of Bionicle masks, because again, this one in pearl gold, already, if you just ignore the Norik torso, that could look like a really cool Takanuva mock. And finally, the Mask of Shadows, you can see right here, and no surprises, connects perfectly well just as you'd expect it to, and works just like the actual Kenohi Kraahkan as an actual official Bionicle piece. So
The clutch power on these I was so impressed by, really happy with how it turned out. Honestly, better than the clutch power on the mask that I own right now, so super happy with that. And with that, we've probably about summed up our look at the amazing Socketball resin casts. When I got these in the mail, I was so impressed and shocked by just how good the quality was, just how well they compared to the actual Lego pieces, and honestly, I will definitely be buying more once the actual next mask drop is. I have linked his social media and website in the description below if you do want to check him out. It is a really great service to actually get these rarer Bionicle pieces, especially if you want to own the Kenohi, Ignika, and Pearl Gold, but don't want to shell out $200 for it. This is a pretty dang good substitute. And it also beats paying a ton of money to get it off of, say, Shapeways, which would probably charge around $60 or $70 for just the plastic mask, or if you want to mold it in actual gold or some metal or something, then the price will really skyrocket. So I'm just very happy with how these turned out. I cannot wait to get building and get displaying with these. Always wanted some duplicates of some of these rarest masks, but never really made sense to buy it, especially it makes no sense to buy multiples of the Kenohi, Kraahkan, and Pearl Gold tier. Just absolutely crazy in terms of how much money this thing costs now. But zooming out, this is just absolutely fantastic. I cannot recommend Socketball masks enough. This is my first exposure to his particular brand of resin-casted masks, and boy, am I impressed. So go check him out, and thank you so much for tuning in to this rather unorthodox Bionicle Fanon review. Stay tuned for next time for even more LEGO news, reviews, discussion, and analyses coming your way very soon. And stay tuned every Monday for a brand new Bionicle Fanon review, where, if this is one of your first times tuning in after a while, I have opened up the breadth and depth of these reviews. From taking a look at not just only canon mocks and builds, but also some non-canon mocks, some other random Bionicle related stuff, especially stuff like this that is Bionicle things, but not necessarily a buildable character, just all sorts of random Bionicle related things to review. So I hope you enjoyed this video. Thank you so much for tuning in, and I'll talk to you again very soon. Bye bye for now.